left. So you walk out the door, it's to your left, and the men's and the women's bathroom is right there. And are we good to go?
Yep.
We're good to go. Okay, awesome. Well, good evening. I'm so thankful that y'all came tonight. It's so good to see so many of you and meet some new friends. We are actually going to be doing a Facebook Live also, so thank you all for the ones joining us tonight. We have 16 candidates who will be speaking, so I'm going to make the introduction pretty brief and keep the focus on them and what they have to share with you tonight. My name is Hannah Bunch, and I'm the Community Engagement Director for Americans for Prosperity Arkansas. Our volunteers and I have worked hard to put this forum together, and these volunteers are actually the ones who came up with the idea to have this forum. So if you're a volunteer with Americans for Prosperity, would you please stand? Awesome. Thank you so much. So why criminal justice reform? Criminal justice reform has been a hot topic on both the national, state, and the local level. And in the past few years, it's gained such a substantial traction. And for so many groups, for so long, it's been something that's mattered to them, but it's becoming something that we're awakened to. And so whether you or someone you know has been incarcerated, has been the victim of a crime, works in law enforcement, etc., the criminal justice system plays an obvious role in our lives and makes an impact upon everyone daily, though we don't often realize it. Because of this, we thought it would be valuable to the community to allow their candidates to share their views on criminal justice reform. Before we dive into the main event, I would like to introduce to you Krista Glover. I met Krista last year, and we've been able to work alongside her, Colby Parker, Tarnisha Tilson, and others. We've recently founded the Northeast Arkansas Reentry Coalition. And so Krista's going to share with you a little bit about that Reentry Coalition, and then we'll get started.
Thank you all for coming this evening. I am the co-chair of the Northeast Arkansas Reentry Coalition. We advocate for those who are coming out of incarceration into society. We have recognized they have many barriers as they face that transition. And so we are here to advocate for them and put them into connection with any resource providers that we can. Currently, our goal is to put out a resource directory that all of the returning citizens have access to. So anytime that they come across a barrier, then they can access that through our website or through a paper copy that we're going to print and be able to look to see who provides those resources. We meet the first Wednesday of every month at 11:30 a.m. at the Temple Baptist Church here in Jonesboro. Thank you.
I want to make sure that we highlighted them to show you all that it's something that's important to this community and that they've recognized there's a need for that. And so thank you for sharing that, Krista. With that, I would like to ask the candidates, they are actually right here on the front row and made a little circle, if y'all will exit the room. And we will call out the first candidate in a few minutes, but I have a few housekeeping details for the audience. So if y'all don't mind exiting, and y'all will go out into the lobby. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I actually just joked with one of them about, I said, I've been emailing y'all for a few weeks and sending out all these rules, your do's and don'ts, and I said, and guess what? The audience gets some do's and don'ts before y'all come in. So, anyway, so firstly, I'm going to read this verbatim, so I'll make sure I cover it all. So, we got 5 different things. Firstly, as an audience member, you will behave with respect to each of the candidates. Please know that any actions to intimidate, embarrass, or distract any candidate will result in being escorted off the premise. Please refrain from clapping unless a candidate is entering or exiting the room. Secondly, no cameras can be used inside. However, smartphones are allowed and should be set on silent mode. So if y'all want to go ahead and grab your phones, put them on silent mode, turn off the flash. Yes, because flash photography from a smartphone is not authorized and will result in being escorted off the premise. Thirdly, I want to explain the order of speakers tonight. The candidates are speaking in ascending order according to position, the district number, and their last name. Fourthly, due to the number of candidates participating, we will not have time for a formal Q&A, but after the event is officially over, you are free to seek out your candidates and speak with them as long as they are willing and able to stay. I do want to note the building will close promptly at 8:30 p.m., so please move out to the parking lot if you stay longer than that time, because we don't want to overstay our welcome. Also, fifthly, if you have brought any campaign materials with you, you are strictly forbidden to wear and or disperse them at the forum tonight. The candidates may use, but are not obligated or limited to addressing these 3 questions I sent beforehand to help them focus on the topic. So I sent these, they may not address them, but if you start, they may read them off, so I wanted to let you know these 3 questions I sent if they wanted to use them as kind of a skeleton. The first was, what do you see as the biggest barrier to justice being actualized in our criminal justice system? 2, should you be elected within your role as legislator or judge, what solution or solutions would you support or bring forth to improve our criminal justice system? And third, some judges have instituted drug courts, where judges have greater latitude to address drug problems motivating criminal conduct. What are other correctional steps would you like to see in place of incarceration for those who have committed low-level, nonviolent crimes? There are notepads on your tables and pens, so feel free to use those to take down any questions or notes that you have. So if you do want to see your candidate afterwards and you wanted to ask some questions you forgot later, I wanted y'all to have a chance to record that. So, and with that, Alec, will you ask our first candidate to come in? So each candidate is going to have 5 minutes to speak, by the way, just so y'all know. So they're going to be sharing their point of view on criminal justice reform. All right, so this is Bobby Long. And Bobby, will you start by sharing what position you're running for, and then what area your position covers, and then you can feel free to dive into your speech.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Hannah. Again, my name is Bobby Long, and I'm running for State Representative District 53. An easy way to think of District 53 is the Eastern District. If you were to take Red Wolf Boulevard and go east, and it goes out to Terra Hills, Sage Meadows, Brooklyn area, then going east down Highway 18. Of course, you catch Nettleton, Caraway, Black Oak, Monette, Lake City. So that's sort of the area that District 53 is in a nutshell. So when Hannah sent us this package, one of the guiding questions was, what do you see as the biggest barrier to justice being actualized in our criminal justice system? And I think to answer that question, we would have to have a common understanding of what would be the ideal criminal justice system. Because it's difficult to know how to fix something if you don't have an idea of what you're trying, or the goal that you're trying to reach. And to me, first of all, I'm on Jonesboro City Council, and I'm not an expert in the criminal justice system. But I think that gives me an advantage because I don't think I know everything. But I do know a lot of people who know a lot of things. And when you start pulling information from those people that have been in it, you can gain a lot of information that will help policymakers make good decisions. And we're going to talk about that a little later. But to me, the ideal system is one that is rarely needed. And also, but then when it's needed, the system is swift and it's fair. Diverting people from the criminal justice systems means breaking down barriers to personal success, both societal and cultural barriers. Those barriers are like literacy, education, poverty, and the health and well-being of the family unit. Let's just look at one of those things, for instance, literacy. 85% of all juveniles who interface with the juvenile court system are functionally low literate. Juvenile incarceration reduces the probability of high school completion and increases the probability of incarceration later in life. High school dropouts are 3.5 times more likely than high school graduates to be arrested in their lifetime. High school dropouts are 63% more likely to be incarcerated than their peers with a 4-year college degree. You know, in some cases and in some states, 75% of the inmates did not complete high school or are classified as low literate. 70% of all incarcerated adults can't read at a 4th grade level. If we really want to curb the strain on the criminal justice system and make inroads in diverting people from the system, we must attack the problem at the root and foster strong families and child literacy. And I'm just going to say this, as you know, if you followed anything that I've done on the council, you'll know that I will speak my mind and I will tell you just exactly how I think things are. And to be honest, it frustrates me to no end to think that there are those who would place the same value on little Johnny, who is a 4th grader, knowing how to have protected sex with little Susie, than we are little Johnny grasping the concepts of reading. I would support community-based, family-focused alternatives in juvenile detention, such as smaller treatment facilities which are local, that can help the juvenile and the family with education, job training, community restorative work, which means if they've damaged property, then they go out and they help repair it. And community service opportunities. Then once these facilities become operational, I'd support limiting correctional placement of youth to those who only commit violent acts. For instance, Georgia did the same thing, and they reduced confinement by 17%, and those awaiting placement by 51%. Just by initiating some of these measures, those are real results. The ideal would be to empower local officials to use risk and needs assessment tools to mandate screening to identify youth who require supervision or who may be able to benefit from mental health services or substance abuse disorder treatment. Then support local countywide programs that build meaningful community-based, family-centered programs where outcomes are measurable and sustainable. I would also support solutions that use technology to improve efficiency. You know, I'm an HR director, and good data equals good decisions. You know, it's like the old saying, junk in, you get junk out. So better data, solutions that reduce recidivism or rearrests, and solutions that foster alternative dispute resolutions. Am I done?
Yes.
Okay, I thought that was the halfway mark. You know what's very difficult? Okay, go ahead. You go.
Hey, thank you so
You're
much.
good.
I appreciate it
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you all. That's okay. That was our first round. We're getting the system down. Awesome. Alex, do you mind sending in Sean only? I like seeing those pens going. I'm seeing a lot of notes being taken. That's encouraging. So Ms. Sean only. So Ms. Sean, whenever you get up here, do you mind sharing what position you're running for and what area that covers? And I actually have a disclaimer for Ms. Sean. So her and another candidate, when I introduce him, I'll let you know who he is. But there were two candidates that somehow, in my research, I missed. And when you're trying to find all the candidates and what districts you're running for, I made the big blunder of missing Ms. Sean, so she came out 10 days later than the rest of the candidates. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer so y'all knew, and I'm very thankful that she made the time and made it work to be able to come. So thank you.
Write her name so I can label her.
Good evening. I'm Sean Only, and I'm running for House District 53. House District 53 is comprised of Jonesboro, part of Jonesboro, Brookland, Black Oak, Caraway, Lake City, and Monette. Firstly, and for the record, I do not condone any type of crime, petty and especially felonious. There are degrees of crime of which our system of justice addresses imperfectly. The issue is how those crimes are handled and the criteria that is used to penalize criminals. If we were all honest about the biggest barriers to justice, we would admit that there is a superiority and an inferiority complex that goes back to Lincoln. The barriers also involve greed and the need to take advantage of the disadvantaged. Those with little typically are penalized the most because they are ignorant of their rights and have little financial recourse to satisfy the financial penalties assessed against them. Imagine that someone who commits a misdemeanor is defenseless, and that they are defenseless when they commit a crime intentionally or by no fault of his or her own, but because of a system that seeks to maintain their inferiority. I am, however, encouraged by the bipartisan-led federal First Step Act signed by Trump in December 2018. When I am elected, I support the following improvements to the criminal justice system. Changing how our children are prosecuted based on the crime. Addressing unlawful restraint. The recidivism rate. Taking money that is spent to imprison those who commit petty crimes to providing gainful employment and educational opportunities. Closing private prisons that are not there for the purpose of rehabilitation, but for profit only. Discontinue criminalizing those who suffer from mental illness and addiction. We need to turn psychiatric hospitals back from prisons back to psychiatric hospitals. Medication-assisted treatment, which is the program for those who suffer from addiction. We relocated here because my husband is one of few board-certified physicians in addiction. We need to add more crisis stabilization units, mental health and addiction facilities instead of jail. For those who have been falsely accused or rotting in jail for misdemeanors, we need immediate expungement of their records or his or her records and the option to register to vote immediately. We need to ban the box on job applications for those whose records have been expunged. And Fair Sentencing Act, that deals with crack versus cocaine. Same thing. Why do we have a different penalty level for those who sell crack and those who sell cocaine? So the question was posed, what would I like to see in place of incarceration for those who have committed low-level and nonviolent crimes? I researched different programs around the country that are getting high marks for their drug courts, and some are substance abuse programs, family-based programs, and mentoring programs. And then parents need to take responsibility for their children and accountability. And we need to teach those parents how to be better parents. So finally, when researching reform, I noted that the goals of the Department of Corrections had 6. And of those 6, the 4th goal is providing constructive correctional opportunities that will help inmates successfully return to their communities. And then transparency was number 6. At any rate, I thank you for your time and the opportunity to share what I would do as your representative.
Thank you, Ms. Shawn. I really appreciate that. Alec, can you send in Cole, please? Also, just so y'all know while we're waiting, on Americans for Prosperity Arkansas Facebook page, we are doing this live. And so after the event, y'all can
353 state representative. It's the, basically if you came down 351 and everything to the east of Craighead County, that would be the district. So I'll go ahead and get started. The goal of criminal justice reform, in my opinion, is to prevent crime and to make our communities safer. You know, everybody wants to work and live in a safe, prosperous community. Right now, there's about 1.5 million people that are behind prison bars. And that costs our society billions and billions of dollars. Here in Arkansas alone, we spend probably around $350 million a year on our prison systems, which translates to about $22,000 per year per inmate. When you break that down even further, every person who lives in Arkansas, that's about $120 to $130 per person that we're spending on our prison systems, or about $500 a year for a family of 4. And, you know, what are we getting for this? If you look at like the recidivism rate or reincarceration rates, the reincarceration rate about after 3 years is about 66, 67%. After 5 years, it's about 75%. So right now, the system's really bloated. And I think we can do better, and I think we need to do a change. Now, does that mean we let hardened criminals into the streets? No. But what it means is we can help those that are willing to be helped. And how do we do this? Well, I think there's about 3 points that we can do. One is prevention, and the other one is actually addressing prison reform. And I think we need to monitor and continually improve what we're doing. So I'll talk a little bit about prevention. You know, how do we prevent people from going to prison in the first place? I think one of the things that you need is a strong economy. You know, having good, well-paying jobs, lifting people out of poverty is proven to reduce crime rate. So we need to institute policies that provide well-paying jobs here in Arkansas. The second thing is education. We need good schools. Everybody should have the opportunity to have a good education. And that just doesn't mean people going to college, but it also means some trade skills, vocational training. And then we need to identify those kids at risk. And the third thing we can do for prevention is education again, but not so much book study, but more education about like life, you know, educate people about the consequences of drugs, early teen pregnancy, and just life skills in society. And then, you know, life choices, you know. Becoming a criminal and choosing to be a criminal doesn't end well. If you look at quote the most successful criminals that people talk about, like Pablo Escobar, El Chapo, you know, you look, where are they now? They're either in jail or they're dead. So that's the future of those who are, you know, pursue criminal activity. The other thing we need to do is support family units. I mean, the family is the best support group that people can have. The other thing we need to do is have secure borders, stop the influx of criminals and drugs coming into our country. The other thing we need to do is have appropriate mental health facilities, and then we have drug treatment facilities. Right now, we're in the midst of an opiate crisis, and there's more people dying from opiates per year than like car accidents. And the other thing we need to do is make sure our law enforcement is supported and appropriately funded. And that's what we can do to help people from going to jail. And then once people are in jail, what can we do to help them when they're there? Some of the things we can do is one of the programs was the First Step Act. Another one is Risk and Needs Assessment System, where people are basically getting early release for good behavior. They can earn credits to get released. Things we can help when people are incarcerated, you know, help with their addiction, educate them, teach them how to. A lot of these people don't even know how to read or write, and so it's hard to get a job if you cannot have those basic functions. And then teaching them again about lifestyle choices and then mental health treatment. And then faith-based programs can even encourage those, because that's been proven to help people not to re-enter prison. And the other thing we need to do when people get out, we need to help them find a job. 70% of people who are released end up not being able to find work, and that kind of tilts that table toward them doing more criminal activity, which makes the whole cycle repeat itself. So we always need to keep in mind that our goal is to reduce reincarceration and make our communities safer. The other thing we need to do is constantly improve. You know, we don't need to become complacent. We need to have the right people in the right positions, making the right choices. And then we need to monitor what is working and what is not working. And we need to implement best practices. So these are some of the things that we can do, you know, prevention, prison reform, and continually trying to improve our systems. Now, I do not advocate for making prison like the Four Seasons. I think people should have a healthy respect for prisons, because I think that helps deter crime as well. And I don't advocate for releasing rapists or murderers and hardened criminals back into society. But what I do advocate, though, is helping people who want to be helped to get the education and support that they need so they become productive, law-abiding citizens. Because I think that helps them, that helps the state and the country save millions and millions of dollars, and it helps our society become a safer and better place.
we go. Awesome. This is Mr. Jim Burton, and he is, okay, awesome. If you could please share what position you're running for and what area that covers, and then go ahead and get into your speech.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, folks. I'm Jim Burton, and I'm running as a candidate for the House seat, District 58, which is comprised entirely of Jonesboro. It's central Jonesboro, if you will. Runs from East Nettleton out by the airport up to about Flint Street, and then picks up on Wood Springs Road and runs out south, crosses the bypass, and takes in a lot of the residential area out that. And in the north end, it takes in downtown Jonesboro over to about Kate Street, if you know where that is. So that's the district I'm running for. I decided to run because I've been here 43 years. I've been here longer than that. As a matter of fact, if you count college, I've been here 48 years. I've been practicing law about 42 years now, here in Jonesboro and at a branch office up in Highland over in the Ozarks. And what prompted me to do this, I've been in public service before. I served as city attorney for 5 years. I served on the state judicial district, second judicial district jail board for this area. I have prosecuted hundreds of cases in district court back in those days. And for the longest time, we didn't have much problem with violent crime. It was, most of my dockets back then were DWIs and small thefts and what have you. And over the past few years, we've developed a kind of an ugly tendency toward violent crime, toward holdups, toward people holding up convenience stores, people coming over and holding up drug deals that are taking place, etc., etc. And when you start having 3 shootings on Vine Street in one night back in the end of October, and we live up on Nettleton between the Montessori School and the Country Club, less than a mile away, I get a little uneasy. I don't know about you. So that in part has prompted me. I've done a lot of work with the police department, both in the positions that I just discussed, and also about 10 years ago, the mayor asked me, along with Skip Mooney, to head up a committee to pass an emergency sales tax right at the start of the recession, 2011, so that we didn't have to lay off about 1/3 of the police department and 1/3 of the fire department. And in the hottest summer I can remember, at the start of a recession, we talked to people at Jonesboro into voting for that, and we kept the police department where it is. Unfortunately, our growth has outstripped the capacity of police and fire services to do what they need to do. She's raised the 2-minute shot clock. I'm in trouble. All right, here's my thinking on that. I learned a long time ago, and didn't learn this at law school, I learned it in graduate school in Memphis when I was studying police science. The best deterrent to crime is not the length of the sentence. The best deterrent to crime is a highly visible mobile police force, so that people who are considering crime become deterred by not so much the length of the sentence, but by the likelihood that they'll get arrested. Because that's as far as these people think. It is a type of cognition that defies me, but they're not worried about, I'm going for 20 years. It's, I can do this, I can knock over this liquor store, or I can knock over this convenience store, and I won't get caught. Well, the other thing I'm in favor of, because so much of our crime right now has been coming from outside of Jonesboro, and I grew up in Blytheville, and so I know from whence I speak. From Mississippi County on south, down to West Memphis, Forest City, Brinkley. Look at the arrests. Look at the arrests in the paper. Listen to the arrests on Channel 8. How many people are out from out of town? I intend to offer one piece of legislation, which is a statute, which is an enhancer statute, where if you cross a county line to commit a felony, we add 10 years to your sentence. Now, you think I'm totally a hard ass here? I'm not. I'm very much in favor of drug courts. I want to see a mental health court established here. And in conjunction with that, I'd like to see a veterans court established here. Because so many veterans are coming back in absolute despair, and because of the effect of explosions on the brain, I've studied some of this doing personal injury work, I just got the red flag, folks. God bless you. I've tried to cover a whole lot here in a few seconds. Thank you for the opportunity, but with 12 more people to listen to, you probably forget what I said in a little while anyway. Y'all have a good evening.
Hello, Ms. Brantman or Representative Montgomery, would you please share what position you're running for and what area you are covering?
Thank you, Hannah. I am Representative Brant Smith, District 58. My area covers basically the heart of Jonesboro, down Wood Springs Road up to Johnson Avenue, to some extent part of A State, over to I believe the railroad tracks in the Nettleton area. So it's a narrow, small, but very congested, little district. Some of my colleagues tell me they drive 100 miles to get across their districts, and I can be across mine in about 10 minutes. But it's a very busy, hectic district with a lot of things going on. All right. So, am I just to read the questions and answer them myself?
However you want to do it. I've read them, the questions.
Okay. Well, let's just jump right in. I'm going to be watching the time really close, as I know you will be too. But what do you see as the biggest barrier to justice being actualized in our criminal justice system? Well, first of all, perhaps the greatest barrier to our relates to misunderstanding how the justice system works. A lot of people find themselves in trouble, but they don't know what to do next. They're at the mercy of local law enforcement. They find themselves in and out of court. They find themselves with multiple fines, layer upon layer of assessments that go along, and fees. And so they become trapped in that system. Now, people who commit crimes or are repeat offenders often find themselves in that cycle, as we mentioned, that becomes near impossible from which to break free. I've been working with Futures for Felons here in Jonesboro for a while. I have been to the Reclamation House over here in Jonesboro, and honestly, some of the best things that we can do, even as legislators, is just point people to ministries like John 3:16, John 3:17 for women, and Reclamation House. And so when I took the tour of the Reclamation House, they have 2 women per room facility, and I thought, wow, you've got a nice deep tub here. I'll bet they enjoy a hot bath at the end of the day. And they said, well, no, they're all wearing ankle bracelets, so they can't get down in the tub. But that is a place where transition occurs, and I think with the reforms that we want to see happen, if we had more homes like the Reclamation House, it would really benefit the women and men that are released from incarceration. They're still under probation, they're still accountable, but it's safer for them. And it says, should I be elected again, within your role as a legislator, what solutions would you have to bring forth to improve the criminal justice system? Well, I serve on the House Judiciary Committee. I've served on that committee for 2 terms, and we hear a lot of bills dealing with criminal justice. For example, the legislature supports specialty courts, which include mental health courts, veterans courts, and drug courts. Not everyone that commits a crime should be incarcerated. Sometimes these people, they don't even know what they're doing or what's happening to them because of a mental illness. You also know that here in Craighead County, we also have the CSU, the Crisis Stabilization Unit. I toured that on the grand opening, and I thought, what a great place. We don't have to house these mentally ill people. We need to get them help. And so I support that. For nonviolent offenders, there are alternatives to incarceration: oversight, probation, and monitoring. And I mentioned the best option we've got locally here is something like Reclamation House. I'm working, as I mentioned, with Futures for Felons to help these individuals regain their personal rights. For nonviolent offenders, I support, after they've paid their debt to society, their fines, restitutions, and fees, to give them their right to vote back. I think that's critical. Why would we want to continue punishing our citizens once they've done everything we've asked them to do? And so I do support that, and am looking at maybe carrying or sponsoring or co-sponsoring a bill that will do that. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you so much. Awesome. We're going to have I think we're missing something. Alex going on. All right, so we have Jack Ladyman, and would you please represent Jack Ladyman? Would you please share the district you represent and what the district you're running for and what area that represents for them, and you can begin your speech.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you. I represent District 59. That's North and West Jonesboro, North and West Craighead County. Criminal justice is not one of my strong points. I was a mayor for a while, and I understand the system. We had a court in our city, and so I understand the system, but it's not something that I work on a lot. But let me just talk about a couple of things, and I know time will go pretty fast, but the best way to handle crime is to prevent it. So if you can do things to prevent people to get into that system, that's the best thing to do. Just give you a couple examples of legislation that we ran the last session. One of the few unanimous votes that we had on the House floor was Act 189. It transforms and reforms the juvenile justice system by utilizing a validated risk assessment tool. So what that does is that you can evaluate children or high school before they get into the system, and I think that's what we really got to do to work on our system, the crowding and that sort of thing, is to reduce the number of people that are going into that system. And this particular program, give you some of the results in the pilot program. The court saw 50% reduction in the number of kids going into detention centers, 42% reduction in kids going into DYS. So there's some good results there, and 35% reduction in cases filed by prosecuting attorney's office. So the second part of this question I want to talk about a little bit more if I can. Talks about what solutions would you bring forth. Let me just give you some statistics. In Arkansas, there were 379 drug overdoses, overdose deaths in 2016, which increased to 411 in 2017. In nearly a decade since 2000, deaths involving opioids has increased by 200% in the U.S. I'm honored to be one of 25 legislators asked to serve on the National Conference of State Legislators 2020 Opioid Policy Fellows Program. This program is designed to support legislators who are experienced or emerging leaders in opioid addiction and overdose issues. I attended a meeting this past weekend in Austin with 19 other legislators. We shared what we're doing in the different states to reduce the opioid epidemic. There are a lot of good things. Dr. Smith, our Department of Health Secretary, was there. He was on a panel. We got a lot of good information. And I'll tell you, Arkansas is ahead on this program. Even though we are the number 2, well, let me put this another way. We're number 49. We're next to worst in opioid prescriptions per capita, right behind West Virginia. So we have a problem in Arkansas. That's one of the reasons that I was able to get on this fellowship, because you had to apply for this, and there was quite a few people applied, and only 25 legislators in the nation got that. And it's something that affects our state a lot and affects our justice system a lot. It bogs it down. But not only that, the impact that it has on people and families and communities and the state, you know, the economic impact of that. And a lot of these folks that are on these opioids, you know, got on there through prescriptions, not something that they went out on the street to get drugs. So I really am looking forward to working on that program. It's a 9-month program, and I want to bring some ideas back from some of the other states to Arkansas and take them to the Capitol in 2021. I only got a couple minutes left, so I want to get this last one. This last question, it talks about the drug courts. I think the drug courts are great. It's something we need to do. We need to do more of. I've sat in a couple of them. I think they do a really good job. But what I think we need to do, again, is keep people out of the system. And these crisis stabilization units, like the one we have here in Jonesboro, we've got 4 of those. It's a pilot program, if you're not familiar with it. It's working well. It hasn't been in operation very long. But I think the governor gave $6 million, I believe it was, to get these started. And what this is an intervention when people are picked up. Before the police officers on the beat, if they pick up someone who is, they think might be mentally unstable or on drugs, they only have 2 options, the hospital or jail. And that's not where those folks should go, either one of those places. So these stabilization units, they can take them in there, evaluate them, keep them for 3 days, and then get them into a program. And I think that will help our system a lot. And I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. While we're waiting for the next candidate to come in, which is Mr. Reginald Prunty, I actually forgot. So Jim Burton, who came in and spoke already for District 58, he is the one that I also, when I was doing research, I met him, and he found out, I think 12 days after I sent out the first email to the candidate. So very thankful for him that he's able to make it work. But he did get a later notice than the rest of the candidates, so I just wanted to take note of that. But with that, Mr. Prunty, will you please come and would you share what district you're running for, what position, and what area that covers, and then you can get to your speech.
My name is Reginald Prunty. The district I'm running for is District 59. It actually covers 351, everything west of it. It goes down Johnson over to Cover House, and it covers everything west of it. It actually goes over almost to Alexander, but it cuts across 226, which includes the Sage Meadow, Richmond area, and then it cuts back again and goes over 267, which includes Cache, Bono, and Egypt. So at this time, what I would like to do is share some information with you. The biggest barrier of justice for me, increase the budget to pay our public defenders more, to provide interactive, to make it attractive for attorneys to support the workload. Common sense sentencing, guidelines for nonviolent offenses, for example, suspending driver's license for offenses unrelated to driving issues, such as failure to appear. The question two, I would like to say, solutions that I would support for being the fourth improvement of the justice system. Community education and town halls on the importance of serving on jurors. Because a lot of citizens is done by jurors, citizens should understand how this impacts the justice system. Ending cash bail system for a low-level, non-violent offense. Repeat offenders should be held accountable by some standards. Number 3 for me on that one is more police training and social work, mental and social issues, so that they are empowered to resolve issues in their community. I want to pause for a second. We used to have what we call community-oriented policing. The officers had a chance to know the people got a chance to learn the officer. So in that time, when you know someone by name, you generally treat them a lot better. So that's one of the things I would like to see come back to Jonesboro or in the entire district. We need to get to know each other, so I think people act different when they know someone, okay? My third issue is in prison. If prison is to be seen as rehabilitation, I support increased funding for educators, social workers, therapists, and other healthcare practitioners to address social issues that leads people to crime in the first place. So basically what we're saying is when people are in poverty, they generally cause crime. They all have needs. So if we're not meeting their needs, and as an example, if someone comes out of prison, we need a path to help get them back on the right track. And I think we're failing in that area. The last portion for me is what other correction steps would I like to see in place of the incarceration of those who have committed lower-level nonviolent crimes. Partnerships between local evidence-based programs that support social rehabilitation and criminal justice systems will work. This leads to a strong community by keeping families intact and developing a productive citizen in our community. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Is there a water? I'm glad you said that. Well, I guess we're out of waters, but if y'all want some candy or anything, y'all are welcome to get some. And now we're going to move into our state senate candidates, and we're going to have John Cooper. And Senator Cooper, could you please share what district you are running for and what area that represents, and we can get into your speech.
Thank you. John Cooper, State Senate District 21, run for re-election, and it covers most of Craighead County. Just a few area around the fringe that's not included in it, but it's most of Craighead County. In responding to your questions concerning the criminal justice reform, I want to review with you some of my efforts already undertaken and some accomplished. We still have much to do, but I want to kind of hit the highlights of this tonight. I doubt that there's a bigger question or a bigger issue today in our state than the issue of recidivism. In our state, over half of those that are released from prison return in the first 3 years. It's not hard to identify the reasons why it happens, but making change politically is quite another matter. In a recent year, over 8,000 inmates were released, and we expect 4,000 of those to return. That will cost our state about $90 million, and if we could cut that in half, we would have $45 million in surplus to reduce other taxes, to benefit our taxpayers and our economy, and to shift to other areas like highways or education or health care. Prison costs are just like a hemorrhage in the natural body. It is a drain with no benefit. If we can reduce it, then the savings is immediately realized. So what are some of the reasons that people reoffend? Some will offend no matter what advantages they might have. But there are some that want to get their lives straightened out and will work to that end. And we need to help them in that area to salvage their life and with the right programs. Some of the reasons for this happening are lack of occupational skills and the ability to find jobs and obtain licensing. Another is transportation to get work and even a driver's license. Another is finding employers that will hire them and co-workers that will accept them in the workforce. And last but certainly, this is not a complete list, but is education. My view is that we have dropped the ball to some extent on occupational educational licensing, and by concentrating too much on waiting for inmates to be released to start the educational process. Waiting until released, at that point, is when somebody is already needing a steady income to earn a living and support their family if they have one, to support themselves, and at the same time to enroll in a non-income producing education is just simply a recipe for failure. The only chance that we have to successfully reduce recidivism in our state is to heavily concentrate on pre-release education. In our last session, I sponsored a bill to greatly reform the manner that occupational licensing boards deal with licensing people with criminal backgrounds. This is a dramatic improvement on what we had before, and it will have, over time, I think, great acceptance with the boards and with the public in general. But right now, a lot of people don't even know that that opportunity is there. So, if you want to check out what I did there, it's Act 990 of the 92nd General Assembly. It's quite a large bill. It's about 66 pages, but I think it'll be really informative to you to read that. Finally, the governor appointed me to chair the red tape reduction task force to study and work on elimination of unnecessary regulations in our state pertaining to occupational licensing. I chaired that committee. I'm happy to report to you that, in my opinion, it was wildly successful, and we passed over 40 bills in the last session in regard to that effort. I think there's still much work to do, and as I said, we have scarcely scratched the surface, but we need to address inmate education in the prisons while they're still there. I think as legislators, attorneys, judges, and even citizens and voters, this is a critically important issue whose time has arrived to be placed on priority level. Thank you.
You can hold on just a second. Thank you, Senator Cooper. Yeah, tell him to hold on just a second. Okay, I want to give you all a break. I want you all to stand up real quick and stretch. Yeah, stand up. I want you all to get your juices flowing. And if you want to grab some candy, there's chocolate, there's cookies over there, and you can it up. There's mint. So for like the next 60 seconds, y'all can run over there and grab something real quick, and then get back to your seats. Okay, y'all got one more minute.
Good, how are you?
It is on a Facebook page. I just shared it to my own. Americans for Prosperity
Thank you. Yes, I'm Dan Sullivan, running for Senate District 21, which is Craighead County. My first responsibility is to write laws that protect everyone's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's a price to pay when you don't follow those rules. People can turn their lives around and lead productive lives, and our laws and judicial system should allow for such opportunities. Every crime and every criminal are different and should be treated differently. Increasing taxes is a solution to a problem, but it's not the solution to every problem. And just like increasing a punishment for a crime is a solution to crime, but it's not the solution to every crime. I've met recently with Department of Community Corrections officers, our local fraternal order of police, which includes law enforcement from many agencies. And I've met with people and their families in the criminal justice system, as well as people impacted by crimes of all sorts, both violent and nonviolent, crimes against property, crimes against people, and crimes against society. The solutions that I'm offering and the comments that follow will be mine after visiting with those folks. Again, first we protect the public. And to do that, we must elect judges with experience in these areas who can render good decisions. We have to engage people early, especially our young people who need preventive opportunities and opportunities to reclaim their lives once they've made some errors. We need more well-funded specialty courts, drug courts, veterans courts, mental health courts, and we need lower ratios for our probation officers. People make decisions and choice, and our criminal justice system has to allow for that. We need pathways for people to return to a productive and reentry programs. But we have to remember, and we have to admit, that there are career criminals, both violent and nonviolent. And there's a pathway for them too, and they've got some choice. We need transparency from our parole board regarding decisions that are made to the public, victims, and other people involved in the criminal justice system. I have a letter here from a woman who was on parole, who was having some problems, drug problems and such, and she would go to a parole officer, and the parole officer would make recommendations, and it kept coming back to her, and she was released, and she went back into the public, back into drugs, and back into jail. She would be deferred again over the recommendation of a parole officer, and that cycle continued until finally she was able to get the help that she needs. So we need services and programs that do that. My experience here in Craighead County is really good. We have programs like Out of the Dark. Our parole officers say people can get jobs fairly easily. But the best example that I can give is right here, a friend of mine, Bobby Willis, is back here tonight. Bobby and I met back in, 2000 or so. Bobby moved to Jonesboro, committed a felony when he was young, and has been, in his words, trying to live through that the rest of his life. I wish he could get up here and talk to you, and I hope you'll get a chance to meet him. Because you see the gleam in his eye when he was just recently got all that expunged and got the papers that said, I can go back to work. And these are his words. He says, you try to rebuild your life, but you're disqualified. You try to rebuild your life, but there are roadblocks and hurdles. Bobby is one of the best examples I know in a model been a mentor. He's been a model and someone that I look up to and appreciate having as a friend. He'll be available after this, I hope. And I appreciate him driving all the way from Memphis, Tennessee to support me, his friend, and I'm proud to call him my friend. And what a great example of what our criminal justice system can be for those of us that work together to conquer those hurdles and those roadblocks. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate it. I'm Steve Mooney Jr. I'm running for Circuit Judge Division 5. The Second Judicial District covers 6 counties, including Craighead. I've only got a few minutes, so I want to kind of get to the point about what we're here for. But first of all, I've been practicing here in Jonesboro, Northeast Arkansas for over 36 years. I was raised in Jonesboro. My dad practiced here for 57 years, so I have a little bit of knowledge about what's going on in our judicial system. I've got 2 kids, 2 grandkids, wonderful family. The first thing that I was asked about was, what's the biggest barrier? The biggest barrier, quite honestly, folks, is we've got a broken system. We have so many cases we can't even dispose of. And I practice in every area of the law that there is, and even criminal justice, which only represents about 1/3 of what a circuit judge does. But at the end of 2018, and think about this, we had 37,600 plus cases pending in 6 counties, and we have 11 judges. Which really matters is doing the math. We have so many cases that is our biggest burden, and we have to solve that problem. So how do we solve that problem? Well, our specialty courts, which is another issue, we have to expand our specialty courts. Correct, right now we have 4 specialty courts as far as drug courts are concerned for nonviolent addiction problems. We have 6 counties, we have 2 that don't have drug courts. One is Poinsett, which has some of the highest prescribing rates in the state of Arkansas. So as a circuit judge, I hope that I will be able to have some input on expanding the drug courts and making them better. The problem is that it's also a legislative problem, because the funding comes from the legislature. I mean, people like other people you've got speaking. So you've got to talk to them to fund these particular projects. My dad used to say that we had criminal court 4 times a year. Now we have it every other week. And every other week I walk in the courtroom and it's standing room only. How many of y'all have been to criminal court in Craighead? You ought to go try and look at it and understand what I'm talking about. It's bloated, we take it through the cases, and that's just in the criminal side of it. So we're going to have to do a lot better with regards to scheduling, trying to divert some of these people that are not violent. As everybody knows by now, I started a group called Out of the Dark in 2008 about the drug addiction problems we're having in our communities. We've been educating kids and trying to get leaders to stand up and do something about it. But that's what we're dealing with in our judicial system. And it takes funding. And I'm tired of recycling the same people, because when I go to court, we see the same people over and over and over. And a lot of it is not violent people. Now, we're doing a lot better than we used to do as far as funding. But as far as the judges are concerned, all we can do is try to advance these programs to try to keep this recycling from going on, and actually set more schedules that require attorneys to show up and try cases so we can move these things along. One judge cannot take care of 3,400 cases in 1 year. It just doesn't happen. And it gets bigger every year. That's the problem. So, I think that is part of the solution is trying to, and I cannot talk about specific as a judicial code. Under the judicial code, I can't get into the details of what I can do. But I can tell you this. I've advocated for change in the communities for at least 10 years now. And I intend to advocate for change in our judicial system to make it better. Again, stop this mess, this tidal wave, or what we call a drug epidemic. Thank you so much for letting me come and speak. I hope to be around afterwards to visit and answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
So we have Mr. Tom Young, and would you please share what position you ran for, what area that you're interested in, and go ahead and introduce your speech?
Sure, thank you. Can everybody hear me? My name is Tom Young. I live in West Memphis with my wife Melissa. I am running for circuit judge at position 5. That area encompasses all the way from Crittenden County, Poinsett, Mississippi, Green, Clay, Craighead, of course. Basically, it's bigger than the city. And driven it 3 or 4 times like my wife and I have, you know it's bigger than the city. I don't think that you can understand what some of these chronic communicators unless you know a little bit about it. So, I was born here while my parents were students at ASU. I was raised in Helena, Arkansas. My father left when I was about 5 and a half. I was raised by a single school teacher. I worked my way in high school, college, and law school. I got out, I went to work, came back to this area because I want to come back and serve this area because this is where I grew up. This is home. I was lucky enough to convince my wife that I was an okay enough guy to marry me. We moved to Memphis, or excuse me, West Memphis, and lived there ever since. We raised 2 beautiful daughters here in college at Lyon College on a scholarship, thank God, because I became a prosecutor and paid difference between that and a defense attorney was a lot. I was a defense attorney for 21 years. Came to my wife and I said, I want to change. And she asked me why. West Memphis, when I became prosecutor, had a violence rate 877% higher than the national average. Violent crime. Not just crime, violent. So, after she got over the sticker shock, she agreed, and I became prosecutor. On average, we got 400 cases a year. There's, I don't know if you know the rules. Once you're arrested, there's 12 months to try a case. So I'm pretty sure you're going to have to be a mathematician to figure out that there's 365 days in a year and 400 felony cases, you're not going to be able to get through the last one. Do the best you can. And I concentrated on the people that were swarming my town, my community, this community, our district, violent, repeat offenders. I also believe in second chances. I've given probation numerous times. I worked in drug court. I was a drug court prosecutor for 6 years. I went with Ms. Bannon to the National Association of Drug Court Personnel. I absolutely believe that. But I'm going to tell you, it only works if they want to drink the water. I can make that offer. I make that offer constantly because I want people to get well. There's some people who can't. Some people who don't want to. I do believe in reentry. Thank you. That is an awesome. I talked to a lady at Applebee's during the middle of this, stopped for just a minute, did a bite, sat in the corner, and she came up and introduced herself and said, "You don't know me." I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Well, you put me in prison." That's sort of awkward. And then she said, "Thank you. It changed my life." So I did believe in second chances. You know, if there's things that I can change, I talked to the legislature. As judge, I've joined the committee on the AOC that suggests legislation. I believe that people ought to pay their debt and move on.
Now, I won't get too far into my background because I mean, if you know me, you know me. If you don't, you don't. I have been a practicing attorney for 10 years, and I'm the father of 3 children. My family has deep roots here in Northeast Arkansas, and it's through these roots that I feel a calling to try and serve this community. And one of the ways that we can serve it, and to answer the questions that were asked, is to decrease the docket. Docket is positively overflowing with nonviolent drug offenders. They have to go up to court sometimes once every 3 months, sometimes once a month. They never know. They never have any sense of certainty in their lives. We're taking something that was, a simple drug charge, and we're turning it into a life-altering and destroying event before they're even convicted. We need to work on that issue. We need to get this docket moving, because the only way that we're going to be able to get these cases to a resolution or anything to that effect is to have an order that specifically says, this is what you're going to do. This is your timeline, and if you don't do this, then you're going to have to come and explain why you're not doing this to a judge. It's not happening right now. And that's purely an administrative thing, and it's completely okay to say, I can do that for everybody. Now, in terms of the other things that I would like to see done for nonviolent drug offenders, I think we have to apply the law as it exists right now. There are considerations to how you apply a sentence, to how you apply a punishment. I think the orientation of the law, and I think it's completely fair to say this, the orientation of the law in Arkansas with regard to nonviolent offenders, particularly drug offenders, is towards rehabilitation. But as anybody can see, as anybody who's been in this community can see, that ain't happening, and it needs to change. One of the ways that we can change it is by advocating for the drug court systems. As it stands, there's simply not enough of them. Now, unfortunately, as a circuit judge, I don't have the legal ability to create more drug courts. I don't have the legal ability to say, okay, we are going to pack these things to overflowing with people from all different counties. That's not legal as it stands. What we can do is to get out in the community, just like I'm doing right now, just like all the other candidates are doing right now, and we can say, look, this is what this program is. This is what this program does for your community. This is what makes this program an incredible thing. Here are the statistics. It's actually more effective in many situations than rehab. These are the realities of this thing. I can't tell somebody how to vote, but I can sure tell them what it is that they're voting for. Thank you all.
I'm Matthew Coe. I am running for Circuit Judge for Division 8. It covers 6 counties, covers Clay, Greene, Craighead, Mississippi, Poinsett, and Freeman counties. I am a native of Mound City, Arkansas, which is in Freeman County. It's right between Marion and West Memphis. I have been a lawyer for 15 years. During that time, I operated a small town practice, and basically you're an ER doctor, and whatever comes through the door, basically you do. So you practice in all areas. But for the last 8 years, I've also been a prosecuting attorney. In Freeman County, you can be a prosecutor and have a private practice. During the 8 years I have been a prosecutor, I've handled a third of the felony docket, which is 400 cases a year, plus handled over 2,000 circuit court cases in total. The Division 8 seat that I'm running for is a high volume criminal seat. Most divisions that have criminal dockets have about 20, 25, 30%. Division 8 has over 60% criminal cases. So it's a high volume criminal seat. When we talk about Sam gave us some questions to go over and some questions to ask or to answer from the audience and kind of some areas to cover. As a prosecutor, I can just only talk from my experience. As a prosecutor, justice and protection for the community and the citizens is my number one priority. It always has been, always will be. That's protection for the community. The community has to feel safe in their homes, has to feel safe in the neighborhood, has to feel that their kids can be safe in the neighborhood. My focus has been to remove violent criminals from the streets. Some of the barriers to that, strictly court time. That's devoted to some of these criminal cases. We have a 4-year study that when they added the 12th division, that 23,000 cases were filed, new cases were filed in the last 4 years in that 6-county judicial district. 12,000 of those were criminal. So that's over half. So the criminal docket, the size of it, is not going away, and the Division 8 caseload being 3 times of what the other divisions handle is not going away either. When you talk about implementing specialty courts and things of that nature to try to reduce the court docket, I'm a firm believer in VA courts and drug courts and mental health courts. I'm a firm believer that every county needs those. But
thank you for your time. I think those are ways that we can obviously reform some of the problems that we have here and make the criminal justice system better. You agree? Thank you.
Good evening. I am Constantine Frank Scott Ellington. I am seeking a position as circuit judge for the 2nd Judicial District, position 12. And as I looked over the questions, one of the first questions was, what is the biggest barrier you're seeing in justice being actualized in the criminal justice system? And I believe there a lot of times that's in the eyes of the beholder, but one thing that I have recently, we were actually as the president of Arkansas Prosecuting Attorney Association, I just got back from Washington, D.C., where I was meeting with Senator Bozeman and Senator Cotton's office and our representatives. And one of the things that we most are concerned about, I think, is the mental health piece that's in our justice system. And I'm not talking about silence. I'm talking about we could reduce the capacity of our prisons to some extent by working harder on the mental health piece and the drug rehab piece that we have our society in that situation. Now, as a prosecutor, it's my job, I believe, to enforce the law. Public safety is my #1 goal, and when we have to incarcerate and seek the incarceration of somebody, that's what we do. We do it every day. But so many people are incarcerated because of their mental illness or their failing to take their medications or things like that. So we have those issues that are affecting so much of the population, and that's one of the things that I believe, to answer that brief question, what is that more drug rehab availability and rehab officers and mental health professionals, not just really just seeing a probation officer, parole officer, but also having to see professionals in the field. The next question is, if you're elected, what solutions would you support and bring forth? Well, I have promised that I would not legislate from the bench. I'm not going to bring forth solutions that are not, I'm not going to create a law out of whole cloth. I'm going to follow the law that's written by the legislators and the lawmakers in the state as interpreted by our appellate courts. And I believe that's the job of the circuit judge, to follow the law and implement the law as it's written and interpreted by the appellate courts. So that's my job. And so it's not my job to create a new law or to try to bring things forward. However, if there are the judicial council that would have some input with legislation, and I believe that mental health piece, that drug piece, drug counseling piece is something that should be addressed. And another thing that I think of is the faith-based rehabs. Right now, our judges can't order somebody to go to a faith-based rehab because of certain rules and perceptions of the law. But I believe that we have John 3:16, which is an hour away. It's a wonderful thing. And as a judge, if I could order somebody to complete that as a term or a condition of their suspended sentence, we put them on a 3-year suspended sentence, make them go complete a faith-based rehab, a good one, not one of the private ones, but a good one. And if they're willing to do that, now you can't order somebody to do that if they will not agree to do that. But if they're willing to do that, make that a condition so they can't walk off. The third question is, some judges have instituted drug courts in greater latitude addressing the drug problems and motivated criminal conduct or correctional steps you would like to see in place. Well, I think we see that now. As the prosecutor here, I'm a founding member of our mental health court in Cricket County, I'm a founding member of our veterans court that we implemented. I'm a founding member of our sobriety court, as that we have for DWI families, multiple DWIs. We're doing that. And we're working in that direction. I think we had like the first mental health court in the state. And so, first or second, we were right up there. We had a third or These are called personal responsibility rules, teaching people to be personally responsible for their actions. And it involves a counselor, it involves other parties besides just the probation officer and the law enforcement. So those are my things that I really think they're trying to work with the justice system. Thank you.
Now we have Mr. Scott Wilhite, and he please show a position marker and what area you are participating to teach.
I'm running for position 12, second judicial district, which covers the 6 counties, Clay, Greene, Craighead, Mississippi, Winston, and Freeman. I'm a lawyer here in Jonesboro. I've been practicing for about 31 years. Currently sitting on as a labor commissioner at the Workers' Comp Commission in Little Rock. Been doing it for about a year. Specifically, as far as our criminal justice system, my philosophy from day one has been the same as it is now. We have in our state seal, we have an angel and a sword. One sword says justice, the angel says mercy. And what I think that represents is key to our criminal justice system in that we have to hold fast to the law. We have to apply the law, specifically the same as to person on this side of town or that side of town. But we have to remember that people are the most important resource that we have. So we have to have mercy. In our criminal justice system, sometimes it feels like we're getting run over by a truck. So we can throw all the money we want to and have more attorneys or more court days. But the hardest determination in court is determining the heart of the person that you're dealing with. Can that person be rehabilitated? We want people to be successful. Part of our court system is meant to rehabilitate. Part of our court system is meant to punish. We have to accomplish both parts in our court system. But if people can be rehabilitated, we use various options. The John 3:16 ministries, the Breaking Bonds ministries, the First Methodist. I think our programs that may not be utilized as much as we could utilize those to give someone a chance to be successful. We have people that have committed crimes that are nonviolent, and I know one of the questions dealt with that is how do we allow that person to have a chance? How do we give them a chance to succeed? We have expungement opportunities through our law, but that doesn't really give them a chance to get back in society. I believe we have to partner with businesses to try to provide jobs for people in situations where they have committed felonies. But we have to work together. This is a system, in my opinion, that has lost trust and respect. The law enforcement has lost trust and respect. The judicial system has lost trust and respect. And we have to work together to maintain and reestablish trust and respect of the community. Unless we do that, we're going to have recidivism as we do now. I think that's our biggest problem in the court is we see the same people again and again and again. They end up down at the pen. So what do we do to try to take care of that? As I said, the John 3:16 ministry is probably the most effective program that I've seen. I believe we need to work with more programs of that type. The Breaking Bonds ministry. Programs that have a success rate of giving a person an opportunity to deal with a drug issue. That's what we're dealing with. Many times we deal with those people that if they could get the drug issue behind them, they could get back to a life that they can be productive. So my philosophy is give people a chance to succeed. We have to have punishment for crimes, obviously. Our laws are meant to regulate the relationships that we have in society. And if we don't have the application of those laws across the board,
office, like at the foot of the sheriff when I was a little girl. And so I've grown up around this. I've known people who've been incarcerated, some of our good friends have overcome addiction. And so we have family members. I visited family members, known them first by visiting them